Are the Sixers zeroing in on their next head coach, and is it going to be Nick Nurse? The Sixers set to meet with the former Raptors head man next week. Also on today's show, going to take a look at the top Doc Rivers replacements. That's a combination of the list that Adrian Wojnarowski put out there, but one coach who I would absolutely love the Philadelphia 76ers to hire to replace Doc Rivers. Before we get into all of this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. 76ers now is hot right now, and if you're looking for year-round coverage of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Sixers, this is your go-to spot. Hit that sub button. We appreciate it in advance. Keith Pompey with this report the other day that former Toronto Raptors head coach Nick Nurse, who was let go by that organization, is meeting with the Sixers ownership and management this week coming up in regards to the vacant head coaching position. There's some conflicting reports here that it could be this week or it could be next week. Everything that I've seen, it's next week, so not this week. Either way, he's set to interview with Daryl Morey and this front office, as well as ownership, I would imagine, to replace Doc Rivers. And his resume, it's a pretty good one. He had the circuitous route until he became the Raptors head coach in 2018-2019. He replaced Dwayne Casey as a rookie, won an NBA championship. What happened in the second round? Doink, 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 bucket. That's the quadruple bounce in the second round. Kawhi Leonard, I'm sorry, I had to remind y'all because I got reminded upon doing my research here. Prior to that, took a long and windy path in his coaching career to eventually get to the NBA level. The year after the Raptors won a championship, he won NBA Coach of the Year in 2020, and now he's the Canadian national team coach. Daryl Morey did say in his press conference the other day that the Sixers are going to put an emphasis on a tactical coach. He does believe that's important, but he also said it's not everything. He wants a coach that can get along with players, make adjustments, have a sound culture. That sound culture is what Doc Rivers had, and that's why he's the master, Doc is, of all of these 50-win seasons. Why I like Nurse, and he's emerged as one of my favorites, it's the tactical approach that he has to the game, but the ability to make adjustments within a series. I think there are a few coaches at the NBA level who are really good in that area. It's a Nick Nurse, it's an Eric Spoelstra, it's a Steve Kerr, where you might go down 1-0 in a playoff series, or you might be down 2-1. But then the coach is able to make some of those technical, schematical adjustments, and they make some alterations to their system. And then before you know it, the other team is dealing with some fits because of those aforementioned adjustments. Then you're able to come back in that playoff series because they can't respond. So I do like that area of Nurse's coaching style. And for the Sixers, they did play the Raptors last year in the first round, of course, back in 2019 as well. In the regular season, Joel Embiid would always struggle against a Nick Nurse coach team because he's a very creative defensive coach. He'll send a double team at a player. They'll go box and one. They'll go zone. They'll mix it up with man. And I think that type of versatility and the willingness to try things is really important. Nick Nurse was asked about that one time, and he said, why do coaches not try things? Because they're scared it's not going to work. He is not timid in that regard. What's cool, too, is that he's thought about, bad English there. I studied journalism at Temple. I should know better. Everybody thinks of Nick Nurse as a defensive-minded coach, but he was a hell of an offensive player at Northern Iowa, where he played his college ball. He is still the record holder for three-point shot making at an astounding 46.8%. I thought the player development with the Toronto Raptors was pretty solid. I did hear from a coworker the other day, it's like, yeah, I understand why you like Nick Nurse from the adjustment standpoint, but why weren't they good this past year with Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, and OG Anunoby? Those are fair questions. I'd say kind of maximize that roster a little bit to get into the NBA play-in tournament, but it's interesting nonetheless to bring up. Some have questioned Nick Nurse's leadership style. Instead of having a one-on-one meeting to talk to a player, sometimes he'll just call him out in a team meeting. And there were a couple of instances this past season with the Toronto Raptors where there was some strenuous moments between him, the players, and the team because he is a little bit brash. But I honestly think the Philadelphia 76ers need that. I like Nick Nurse as a hire because Joel Embiid needs that kick in the ass. If they do bring back James Harden, I want to see him and Embiid be a little bit more accountable. Own up to them not rising up to the occasion in some of these big spots. And when they do falter, the coach has to hold them accountable, but they have to hold themselves accountable as well. Doc Rivers is more of a player's coach. And I think Embiid really liked that type of style. But Embiid, he's gotten better every single year. And each year that Doc Rivers was the coach, all three of them, Embiid took that next step. Maybe he needs that kick in the ass to take that next step to go from being great to being a championship type of player. Do you want the Sixers to hire Nick Nurse? Want to hear from you down in the comments section, my Philly Bulls. H for hire, O for other. Sound off, let us know. Now, this is the list of the Doc Rivers replacements that we have as of right now. I would love, and it's my dream, to have Jay Wright, who's already kicking it in the Philadelphia area, who retired from Villanova, who never took the Sixers job when Brett Brown got fired because he loves being in the Philly area and being able to have that option to go to the Jersey Shore. Jay, I got a message for you, man. I mean, look, you want to go to the Jersey Shore? You can coach the Sixers, and you're young, you look great, and I actually think that Jay Wright's system would work at the NBA level. Under this, though, he never really had a great center, but he did have guard-oriented lineups, and I believe that the NBA is a guard and wing league as far as winning NBA championships. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry is smaller guard, Larry Bird back in the day. Centers by themselves don't often win you a lot of titles, but Jay Wright, like the offensive system. I love the ball movement. I like how he made adjustments in game. He's obviously won 2 national championships with Villanova. The resume is great. Nearly a 70% winning percentage, 2 national championships, 2016, 2018, 2-time coach of the year, 4 Final Four appearances, and he turned Villanova into a blue blood. And if we want to go back to that list, Coop, we could do that as well. Of the list of other candidates that Adrian Wojnarowski had reported that the Sixers were initially interested in, Monty Williams, Mike Budenholzer, Sam Cassell, Mike D'Antoni, Frank Vogel, and then my dream hire of Jay Wright. We can focus in here on Sam Cassell. I'm not sure how Doc Rivers feels about having an assistant take over as head coach who is on the bench for some of these Sixers flameouts, because they've been ugly, and Sam Cassell has been a part of that. But his development with Tyrese Maxey has been really special. I think it's only a matter of time before Sam Cassell does become a head coach in the NBA. 15-year NBA vet with 8 teams. He was a part of one of those Bucks teams back in 2001 that went 7 games with the Sixers with Glenn Big Dog Robinson, as well as Ray Allen before he was strictly known as a shooter. NBA assistant coach since 2009. Great track record of developing guards. Doc Rivers was, Daryl Morey was asked, hey, do you want a coach who has a lot of experience? He said, that's not the end-all, be-all, but we do have a roster that's ready to win right now. I thought that was interesting and maybe pointed to wanting to have a little bit more experience than Sam Cassell. For Monty Williams, he's done a great job with Phoenix. They've had a lot of high-level playoff success. It's the Suns, Bucks, and Sixers, top 3, no particular order, for the most wins in the NBA since Doc Rivers became head coach. Monty Williams a part of that. They made it to the NBA Finals a couple of years ago, lost in 6 games to the Milwaukee Bucks. But just like with Sam Cassell being a part of the current coaching staff that choked away some of these playoff leads, Monty Williams has also choked in playoff series, and they've been ousted the last 2 years. Game 6 against Denver, year before that, Game 7 against the Dallas Mavericks, where they got blown out, specifically 2 years ago, and Luka Doncic was their poppy. Eric Spoelstra also ran laps around Coach Mike Budenholzer in the playoffs this past year. And if Coach Bud, who's a Greg Popovich disciple, I thought he did good stuff with the Atlanta Hawks prior going to the Bucks. He won that NBA championship. If he didn't win that championship, though, he'd be long gone as the Bucks coach. He fails to make in-series adjustments. He runs a scheme that leads to a lot of offensive success, but the lack of adjustments there I'm concerned about, especially if he's in a playoff series against Eric Spoelstra. That's been a weak link for Doc Rivers. It's a weak link for Coach Bud. I'd say no. As for Mike D'Antoni, I feel like that name was only thrown in there by Adrian Wojnarowski just because of the Daryl Morey, James Harden connection. But we covered this on Friday, that all signs do point to James Harden leaving the Sixers and signing with the Houston Rockets. That according to Keith Pompey. And as far as a system fit goes, if the Sixers were to somehow bring back James Harden and they wanted him to be the running mate for Joel Embiid, Joel Embiid doesn't make any sense if Mike D'Antoni is the coach. By the time that the playoffs come around, I feel as though he'd be gassed, and that stamina would really be tested, and the system that D'Antoni runs doesn't fit what Embiid does well when the offense goes through him as a slower pace as the big, and maybe that's why Harden didn't really like Doc Rivers' system. For Frank Vogel, defensive mind, he won a championship with the Lakers in 2020 in the NBA bubble. He simply just does not move the needle for me. So as of right now, that's the collection of the top Doc Rivers replacements. The next head coach odds are very interesting. JJ Redick, 3-1 odds. I wonder if he's going to get an interview. He's homies with Joel Embiid, went to Duke, was in the league for a long time. I think he does a good job on ESPN when he's not going on some of his crazy rants with his overall basketball knowledge. Mike D'Antoni, plus 350. Monty Williams, 4-1. Nick Nurse, 5-1. Frank Vogel, 8-1. This is why you subscribe to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Who else is bringing the heat like this, giving you informative Sixers talk? Who do you want to be the Sixers' next head coach? Drop a name for me down in the comments section. Thank you for watching today's show, and don't forget to subscribe.